Manchester United are about to make a statement, an actual statement, because according to multiple reports, a full agreement to sign Atalanta midfielder Ederson is effectively done. A deal worth an initial €48 million with €5 million in add-ons is reportedly across the line, and it couldn't have come at a better time for the club. But before we talk about why this deal makes sense, let's talk about why it needed to happen in the first place.
Hey fam, this is your chance to build the jersey collection you've been waiting for. The Goal 90 bundle deal is live. Buy 2 jerseys and get 10% off. Buy 3 and get 15% off. Buy 4 and get a massive 25% off. Club kits, country kits, retro classics, pick your favourites and save big. And yes, every order comes with free worldwide shipping. The deal runs only until the end of May. Goal 90 bundle deal. Buy more, save more. Shop now at Goal 90 Shop.
Michael Carrick took over a Manchester United side in January that was drifting, tactically incoherent, devoid of midfield structure, and frankly easy to play through. What he did in a matter of weeks was nothing short of remarkable. 11 wins from 16 games, a third-place finish, Champions League football secured. And crucially, Carrick identified the spine of what this team needs to be. He said it himself in no uncertain terms when speaking to Sky Sports. Midfielders need composure, poise and be positive, while also having the physical strength to deal with the quick transitions. He wasn't describing a type, he was describing Ederson. Now Casemiro, who was outstanding under Carrick's brief tenure, has played his final game for the club. The Brazilian leaves with nothing but goodwill, but he leaves a genuine void. United cannot go into a Champions League season with Kobbie Mainoo as the only established central midfielder in the squad. That's not a plan, that's a gamble. So who exactly are United about to bring in to fill that gap? Ederson José dos Santos Lourenço da Silva, known simply as Ederson, is a 26-year-old Brazilian who has spent the last 4 seasons transforming himself into one of the most complete midfielders in Serie A. His journey to Bergamo is a story worth telling because it explains a lot about the character of the player. He couldn't quite nail down a regular spot at Corinthians in Brazil, found his feet at Fortaleza, then made a bold move to Salernitana in Italy during the January 2022 window. In 15 appearances, he became the glue that held a struggling side together, helping them survive relegation with just 31 points, the lowest total in Serie A history, to avoid the drop. That's the kind of environment that builds a certain type of player, a fighter. Within 6 months, Gianpiero Gasperini had seen enough and brought him to Atalanta for over €20 million, an unusually significant fee for a player still proving himself. What Gasperini saw and what the rest of Europe has slowly come to realize is that Ederson is what analysts have started calling a hybrid midfielder. Not a defensive midfielder in the traditional sense, not a creative number 8, but something that sits between and serves both purposes better than most can serve one. He ranks in the high percentiles among midfielders across Europe's top 5 leagues for the percentage of dribblers tackled, passes blocked and interceptions, and he only loses 0.55 duels per 90 minutes. That is extraordinary for a player as aggressive as he is. He averages 2.5 tackles and 1.5 interceptions per 90, with ball recoveries around 6 per game. And crucially, for a player who throws himself into challenges constantly, he commits remarkably few fouls. The aggression is controlled, the intent is surgical. Then there's what he does with the ball. This is where comparisons to Casemiro genuinely hold up, and where they also diverge in a very useful way for United. Like Casemiro, Ederson is a composed presence under pressure, capable of short to medium range passing with an 85% completion rate and comfortable dropping deep to receive and recycle possession. But unlike Casemiro, who slowed in the later stages of his United career, Ederson drives forward. He carries the ball with purpose, he breaks lines, and according to analysts, he averaged over 8.5 progressive passes per game at his best for Atalanta, often initiating counter-attacks from deep positions. His dribbling success rate sits at an elite 68% for a midfielder. He's a bridge between defense and attack in the truest sense, and that bridge has been conspicuously missing at Old Trafford for years. The most telling signal of his importance came in Atalanta's final Serie A fixture of the season against Fiorentina. Ederson was visibly absent from the starting 11, no injury, no suspension. Atalanta boss Raffaele Palladino addressed it directly in his post-match press conference, saying, Ederson didn't play today because there's a concrete negotiation with a top club. That's not speculation. That's a manager managing an exit, a clean exit. United was simply protecting their incoming asset. Now, the question that every United fan worth their salt will immediately ask is, how does he fit alongside Kobbie Mainoo? It's a fair question, and it deserves an honest answer. Carrick's greatest insight since taking charge has been recognizing that Mainoo is at his best when given license to get forward, to influence the game in advanced areas, which is exactly the role Casemiro's positional discipline allowed him to play. The concern with Ederson is that he too craves that freedom to roam. He's not a sitting midfielder. He charges around the pitch, he presses high, he surges into spaces, and the gap he leaves behind needs covering. In that sense, playing Ederson and Mainoo as an unsupported double pivot could possibly create a vulnerable midfield, two players who both want to move, neither of whom naturally stays home. But here's the thing, Carrick knows this. He's already confirmed that United are targeting more than one midfielder this summer. Ederson is reportedly the first domino, not the only one. Names like Tonali, who reportedly has a gentleman's agreement with Newcastle to leave should they miss the Champions League, which they have, and Elliot Anderson have all been discussed. If United add a more traditional anchoring midfielder alongside Ederson and Mainoo, suddenly the picture changes entirely. Ederson becomes the 8, Mainoo gets his freedom, and the anchor sits behind both. That could be devastating. What makes this signing feel genuinely different, beyond the numbers and the tactics, is the context it arrives in. United have had previous transfer windows where they've brought in high-profile midfielders and watched them wilt under the weight of expectation and, frankly, a chaotic environment. Manuel Ugarte struggled. Casemiro declined. But Carrick has demonstrably changed something at Carrington. Players are speaking about clarity and communication. Mainoo went from being frozen out under Amorim to running games within weeks of Carrick's arrival. The dressing room feels different. And Ederson, a player who thrived at Salernitana when the house was on fire, who won a Europa League title at Atalanta through relentless intensity, looks like exactly the kind of character who will thrive in a culture being rebuilt with purpose. Atalanta's willingness to sell also tells its own story. They finished 7th this season and dropped into the Conference League. For a club that once turned down big money for Ederson, they've accepted the inevitable. The player's contract runs until 2027, but he's not signing an extension, and Gasperini himself is no longer at the helm in Bergamo. The era is over. A new one is beginning. For Manchester United, signing Ederson at 26, his peak, for a fee that looks entirely reasonable in the current market, is not a panic buy. It's not optics. It's a football decision that has been years in the making, a player tracked across multiple windows, finally arriving at the right club with the right manager at the right time. What do you think about the signing? Let us know in the comments. Remember to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel. Also, be sure to turn on post notifications so that you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time. Bye.